Welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you that celebrate Turkey Day, this mostly U.S. holiday, I hope your Turkey Day or Thanksgiving or whatever it is you might refer to it as was amazing. If you are still visiting family, we hope that you travel safely back to your home. Or if you're already at home, we are very glad to have you here watching tonight. So, of course, welcome to OSRPG Presents A Blades in the Dark Story, episode 18. We are very excited to bring you tonight's episode, and we are just going to get going right into intros just because our stream starting soon ran a little late tonight. So why don't you just take it away?
My name is Angela, also known as Gangrel Kitty, and I'll be playing Reaper tonight.
Hi, I'm Ryan, otherwise known as Voyce Ryleased, and I'll be playing Martin.
Hi, I'm Doug. I'm going to be playing Blinder.
And I'm Xylus, and I'll be playing Carver.
And I'm Michael. I'll be your storyteller this evening. Okay, well, as you can see, Xylus is back. We're very glad that he had a speedy recovery and it wasn't anything super serious. And we are so glad to have him back here with us tonight. And of course, he'll be back for Sunday is the assumption as well. So that's very exciting to have one of our wonderful cast members back. So I hope you're all excited to see Xylus returning to the cast, because I know I am as well. I've been very interested to see how Carver will respond to the latest things that are going on. So with that, let's get into shoutouts. I know we got a lot of shoutouts tonight, so I'm just going to quickly pass it over first to, why don't we go to Doug first?
Okay, so tonight's shout out, ever expanding into our reaching out and supporting other streams, is going to be to Unmade Gaming. They have a completed just a couple months ago a Blades in the Dark stream, so went up to 3 seasons as far as I know. They may be on break. I don't know. I haven't watched the complete series, obviously, but you can find them at twitch.tv/Unmade Gaming. The shout-out's already been posted in the chat, and you can also find their YouTube at that same name as well, where they do a variety of different games. Currently, I believe they're doing Alien RPG, which is pretty interesting. So, Unmade Gaming.
Awesome. Was that the Alien RPG that we rated last week?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I saw that. I was looking through the channel because I was like, okay, I've seen them post on Reddit about their Blades stream or the Blades game quite frequently. And so when I went to check them out, I was looking mostly at the playlist. But then when I went to go, I was like, well, what's going on with these guys? They did a variety of games, including Alien RPG. They also have the Expanse game that they did, which I'm probably, if I
going to crack on for sure because you love that show.
I love the Expanse. Yeah, they have it's kind of cool. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, well, hey, if you haven't gone by our Facebook group or our Facebook page, go by and check them out. Our Facebook group is Old School RPG Studios, and our Facebook page is OSRPG Streams. Go by, check it out. We got a good wow, if I could talk, that'd be awesome. We have a growing community of people there. Stop by, check it out, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah,
and I'm just going to quickly shout out the followers, the subscribers on the YouTube, anybody who showed us support. You guys are wonderful and amazing, especially our mods as well. So yeah, thank you guys for following, subscribing, hanging out with us, watching the story, and thank you to the mods for just being there and being awesome.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else left from the cast, before we start to yawn on, because, we haven't actually talked to each other in a few days, so that'll end up being the case, let us actually transition to the game. So, yeah. So with all that out of the way, let's tell a Blades in the Dark story. Last week in episode 17, our cast of characters, having reeled from their experiences previously, came together. They were surprised to find that the owner of the Pond Street pub, the place that they had called basically their HQ, was waiting at their door. A conversation took place between Lou Donahue, Reaper, and several other members of the cast. And what was worked out was a deal in which the Risen, our cast's crew, would pay Lou to rent or to buy the Pond Street pub. A lot was revealed in the conversation, in which Lou admitted that in his earlier years, as a young man, we would presume, he worked with a crew of his own, a group of people that presumably did similar jobs to what the Risen had done. After which, our characters now no longer having the burden of dealing with favors owed to other groups. They were able to push forward in order to support their growing crew. They took the tidbit of information that Harlan, a member of the Crows, had given them when they were in Tangletown some time ago, and they decided to look into it. And what they found in a place known as Pearl Row, a small neighborhood near the Six Towers in the Night Market District, was that there was a racket going on. A few jewelry shops in the area had something going on the side, and it turned out that they were using their precious stones, resources, pearls even, to invest their money, to wash it. And so our crew took advantage of the situation. They planned out a heist, and they successfully robbed a store known as the Pearl Passage. However, if I remember correctly, Martin's face was remembered. So perhaps in the future, we might see what consequences will befall our cast. After which they came together, Martin had a strange experience while he was visiting Dundridge and Sons, which led to the entire building going up in flames. It wasn't something he did. At the time, it seemed like an accident, but he couldn't help but feel like it was in some way his fault. In time, he came to realize that some sort of spirit was haunting him, following him, tormenting him, and it bared the resemblance of the man who had been thrown down the hole when Martin was trapped so many weeks ago. At the end of our episode last week, Blinder had mentioned that he wanted to seek out Reaper to have a conversation. A private conversation. And so I figured that would be where we would start this evening. If that is what our cast desires. So we'll begin there. Reaper has walked away into her bedroom, presumably. We'll say the door was somewhat cracked or something, or perhaps it was closed and Blinder barges into it.
He would.
Blinder barges into Reaper's room. Presumably it's only been a few moments. There's nothing strange going on or anything. Blinder barges in, the door opens, Reaper turns and sees Blinder. And if I remember correctly, he slowly shuts the door behind him and faces Reaper. Confidence in his form, at least for the moment. And I'll turn it over to you, Blinder and Reaper.
How dare you walk out like that? You and I have to have a conversation. Do you have
Go ahead.
anything? It is not. You had every right to question whether or not I should be trusted. Objectively, we all have secrets. We all have pasts. None of us have inquired, and we've all respected each other's privacy. And I have done everything I can to support your decisions, because out of anyone here, I think you have the most level head to make those decisions. But you have to understand, this isn't a venture where we're going to get rich. I've never understood what your motivation is, and nor do I have to. But if you're in this for some selfish gain, and you think you can get into this without being forced to rely and to trust us, then you are a fool. We are not here because of any ideal. We are not here to self-enrich each other. We are here for survival. Regardless of whether or not that was your intention or what you want out of it, the circumstance of the proximity, not only myself, but Mr. Carver and Mr. Martin now. Make it that way.
It's your survival, not mine.
And you don't think that they'll crush you in the go to get to me or Mr. Martin? You don't think the Lord Strengthhorn, the most powerful, influential man in the city, will destroy his allies?
And what makes you think I'm not going to step aside?
Why are you here?
I'm here to help.
We have all done you the courtesy of not asking questions until now. But we have every right to understand what dangers you may pose, especially when you bring members of the consulate down upon us. Even though this ended in our favor, and we do have a patron now because of that, it brings many powerful, influential people within the sphere of reach within us. Before we were cockroaches, scurrying around this alleyways, trying to do the best and survive. And because you wanted to go to a party, now people will be asking who you are. And it's only a matter of time.
They already know who I am. Those are childhood friends.
Don't think that people at those parties ask questions of the guests that they do not know. Those are battlefields and different names. Instead of swords or guns, they carry gilded clothing and cups full of wine, words of deceit. And you don't enter that battlefield without understanding one's enemies. Understanding who and where every piece on that board is played. including you. You are the most dangerous enemy of all because you are unknown to them. But we did not ask the questions, and that is fine. It is your business. But Mr. Martin is interacting with new things, and when you walk out like that, if you are going to make decisions, and I'm going to support you making decisions because you're the most capable person, you need to understand that those people out there, I rely on you. I rely on you. And if you step aside when you say things like that, it invalidates the entire integrity of this adventure. You're not merely casting away a chance or opportunity at riches. You don't think it's easy sitting here and vouching for leadership to trust, to engage with the people that they are together with? No, it is not. Everything in my soul, everything in my ounce of my being says not to trust you, that getting close to you will bring me closer to my own destruction.
You're probably right. I said it out of spite. I wouldn't step aside. And I understand that someday they'll crush me. They're gonna crush me because they're gonna come after you. Any of you. That said, I don't play those political games or whatever. I went to a party and I found a couple of childhood friends that I hadn't connected with a long time. I can't seek out my people because I escaped them a while back. I crossed one of their gangs and they want my head for it. And that's why I'm here. But the reason I walked out wasn't any form of disrespect. I walked out because I can't see what you see. That scares me. I don't do well with ghosts or spirits. And if I can't see it, I don't want to be involved with it. That's your specialty, not mine.
It wasn't a matter of whether or not you can deal with such things. I understand that I alone have the unfortunate burden of carrying those particular abilities. I was speaking more to Mr. Martin. We are all alone here. And yes, someone will come and crush us someday. That I have no doubt. But if there's one thing that I cannot tolerate, if we are to trust each other, is to be alone. Again. You, I don't know to what extent you have familiarity with this particular subject. But for me, loneliness is a depth, a hell that I have only begun to climb out of. So, I do not fault you for your decisions or your personal needs. Find your friends, connect with your past. I only ask that we are here. Whether or not you like us or you need us, we are here. And your indifference will mean the difference between our life and death. Um, I'm sorry for barging in here like that. I think I've said enough. I should be going. I'm feeling suddenly very sick. I hope you think about what I've said.
I will.
Good evening. And looking much less confident when he came in here, he kind of shakily opens the door and nervously walks out of the room and closes it like, like when you break something and you try to put it back on the shelf all nice, like you didn't do it. Like maybe being gentle with it will erase the incident or the accident. And go back to the study, or aka his room.
An assumption is that Martin is perhaps engaging in conversations or something of that variety. Or is there something on Martin's mind or agenda, in a sense?
Not, not so much on the agenda right now, but it's more commiserating and dealing with the grief of losing his favorite store. Even for a time.
We'll say that after the conversation you had with Blinder, Mercy sort of took you aside and checked in with you. It was a quick conversation, but she sort of grabbed you by the hand and in a roundabout way sort of like forced you to come with her up into the Pond Street pub proper. You guys sat down at the table and you pulled out like a deck of cards and you started playing card games with Mercy and Eunice and Clyra and a few other people that join into the game for a few rounds or something and then pop out. And for a time, you were at least distracted from the experience that had happened previously in the evening and are enjoying the company of your friend and, in a sense, extended family in a way, I guess, one might say. Crew, family, or something of that variety.
Family's a good way to describe it.
Sure.
Or at least the beginnings of one.
Yeah. So with all those things, it has been 2 days. And Carver, at least to everyone else's eyes and ears, has been off in his room. Perhaps at times he got out, maybe went for a walk outside of the hideaway or something. But at least for the time being, Carver finds himself in his room. In the late evening, in the same relative time that the rest of the cast exists in currently. He's sitting in his room, perhaps thumbing through a book or two that he had borrowed from Blinder from the studies library. The room is filled with candlelight, and he's sort of mindlessly thumbing through the books, bored, yet heavy with thought. My assumption had been that he had taken the conversation that he had with Malone, the assumption that someone could discover who he was so easily, in a sense, something that he had taken as a warning sign, perhaps. At least that is the general feeling I had gotten from the way that you had portrayed Carver in that instance.
Yeah. No, he's definitely aware now that the potential is there for people to recognize who he is. He ponders like how he might go about concealing his identity better.
This thing's sort of heavy on his mind. He drifts, as he has been for the last 2 days, sort of into and out of rest. Falling asleep from exhaustion at times, boredom, whatever the case may be. And on this evening, a shift happens in the room. Like it had happened before, but was waiting for some specific keystroke, in a sense. A note to be played, a chorus to be hummed, in a sense. He hears whispering in the room. A voice speaking to him softly. Yet he's unable to make out what it's saying. It draws closer to him. And he falls
He listens as hard as he can.
Sure. And in that place of restlessness, falling into sleep from anxiety and fear, he travels, in a sense, with this voice. He finds himself sitting at a table. A young man and his family. A wife, it seems. No children to speak of. He's a young man, presumably of some sort of means. Well-trimmed, well-dressed. You can tell he came from humble roots, and he's worked rather hard to get to where he is. He's speaking with the woman across from him, and you can see that there's a spark in his eye. The face you don't recognize. It seems familiar and yet distant. But you can see and feel the emotion that he feels for her, and she feels for him. They are having some sort of conversation, perhaps a honeymoon or a date, anniversary or something. They are quite intimate in their conversation, laughing and whispering to each other as though they are the only two that exist. In time, what Carver sees changes, and they're walking along the park, Onguignot Park, holding hands, pyrotechnics in the sky, enjoying each other's company. There's these brief flashes of these moments of this man's life, and how perfect it seemed. The scenery shifts again, and you see the man standing before judges, magistrates, perhaps. He's defending someone. There's a crowd of people listening in eagerly. No jury to be spoken of, as is the way in Duskfall. He stands confident and sure. He speaks concisely. And he's controlled, well learned. And as the court and the sights shift away, the man becomes older. He becomes ragged, becomes dirty. And Carver sees him sitting in a box, a room, a small room, scribbling on a piece of paper. It looks no more than it could be tissue paper or something of that variety. He crumples it up as a sound is heard coming down a hallway outside of the cell that he sits inside of. pushing the crumpled paper into a small crevice. He's dragged out of the room and questioned. And as Carver watches, he notices a man. Not the man who's questioning. Not the young man whose story he seems to be seeing. But a third person. An older man, more wreathed in shadow than to be shown as a humanoid shape or form. And he watches the man patiently. As Carver in his dream approaches the shape, for the first time having some sort of semblance of control, the shape turns and looks at Carver. And says, "You should not be here." And his hand comes out, pushing Carver. And in that sort of feeling like you're falling, Carver wakes up in his bed, soft candlelight in the room, the book draped over his chest. The whispers fade as Carver rubs his sleepless eyes. And the rest of the night for all of the cast passes. It's the next morning. The crew has gone through what value they can through most of the boxes. There are knickknacks and things of relative value, and some of them seem to be more personal items than they would be jewels or resources or goods. There's a pile in the hideaway that people have gone through at this point in time. Presumably, for the first time in a while, we find that people are able to sleep in, engage in their normal routines, in the way of Martin perhaps returning to his exercise routine. But we'll see. Let's check in with our cast. Okay, so as I was saying, it's the next morning. Martin, we were moving to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, Martin this morning, even though horribleness had happened, he's getting back to his morning workout routine, kind of getting back into shape a little bit, trying to, I don't know, see how many push-ups it takes to get rid of cloudy memories of seeing things he never wanted to see. And then he gets up and he gets dressed, and he takes the time to brush off what clothes he's wearing, maybe if it's got a little tear to sew a little repair in it or something like that. But he is very much trying to get back on his normal morning routine. And if he gets to the kitchen first, he'll start making breakfast.
Reaper will go and meet Martin in the kitchen. And engage in conversation. I don't know if you want us to do that now or...
We'll check in with the rest of the cast, and then we can turn to that conversation. What is Blinder doing in the morning?
He wakens, having his usual troubled sleep. And he is mostly still feeling pretty guilty over, trying to dress down Reaper. So he's kind of going to spend most of the morning in his cell or his like little study, kind of just sitting there, and he'll probably come in at the end of breakfast or something like that. So
Okay. And Carver.
Carver's going to go and bother Blinder.
Okay. Well, it sounds then like we have two scenes. So why don't we turn to Reaper and Martin first, and then we will from there afterwards transition to Blinder and Carver scene. So go ahead, Reaper and Martin.
How you doing, Martin?
Doing better this morning. Got the opportunity to get my workout back on. Feels good to, get a good pump on in the morning. Been slacking lately.
Yeah, same. How you dealing with the loss of the place?
I'm dealing with it. It's only a temporary thing. They'll have the store. They'll have it back open. And I can go other places for clothes, but there was something about that spot. The people there. Oh,
I didn't mean last night to walk out when you were talking to Blinder to be insensitive. I tend to stray from that subject when it comes up because I'm scared. Anything I can't see terrifies me.
why do you think I wanted to see it?
But why?
Because now it's a thing that could potentially hurt you. And Blinder and Carver. It's something
Well,
that can potentially hurt all of us.
it's a lot braver than me.
Well, it's not a matter of bravery, it's a matter of if we're going to do what we set out to do, we all have to be here.
Yeah.
And if you ever want to see, I make no guarantees about being able to help you see, but I can show you what Blinder showed me. And that can, I don't know, it might work for you, it might not.
I'll wait to see how you come out the other end.
I'd like to see what I come out on the other end. No, but I didn't take offense by you walking away. I don't know. I think maybe a little more courage on your end just to start hearing about it would be a good step in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's not to say that you can't handle yourself. I've seen you in a fight. To be perfectly honest, I'd be scared to go after you. And not many people get that. Not many people are up on that level to where they kind of scare me. But there are scarier things out there.
I had a conversation with Blinder last night, and he kind of set my head on straight, as it were. But
You didn't hurt him, did you?
No. And I'll basically tell you what how the conversation went.
He came at you like that, and you didn't hit him?
Was he wrong, though?
I mean, no.
Well, then.
Still. God, I would have loved to have seen that. Why doesn't he do that when I'm around? God!
He'd probably throw up.
He probably would. And then we'll see what all other random critters he's put down his gullet.
Oh, gross.
I know. It's disgusting. It's... In
that moment, Mercy had been in the room, sort of came in and got breakfast, and as Martin says that, Mercy goes to take a bite of something and then just puts it down and is like, and walks away. I'll wait till later for breakfast.
Sorry.
I think,
Sorry, Mercy.
unless there's something specific that you guys wanted to say, because we can always return to the breakfast scene in a sense. Why don't we now turn to Blinder and Carver? Carver had been, after his experience in his dream, seeking out Blinder this morning, and so we'll turn to them. Presumably Carver raps upon Blinder's door or something?
Carver, how do you? If you go to rap on my door, the door would probably just swing open because he doesn't usually seem to. He like almost like he had unlocked it and opened it and then shut it. You know, like it was still half open. And you'd probably see Blinder sitting there like the most, even though there's like wasn't like a lot of bookshelves, he's mostly moved all the study. Like there's one side of the room because the room was longer than the normal bedrooms, at least from what I remember on the map. So on one side of it he's moved all the bookshelves and things, still covering the vault area, and then on the other side he's kind of set up a cot, and he's just kind of sitting there. He has his candles, he has a desk, like a small little bed desk type thing, like nightstand, and you see 3 candles that are set up, and a row of candles that are set like arranged in a very meticulous fashion, and the nightstand is kind of out from the wall, almost very central to where the bed is, and he's just kind of sitting there, still fully dressed. Looks like he, as usual, probably slept in his clothes, and he's just kind of cross-legged sitting there. He has the lights and the rest of the lights on, like the sconces, the lanterns in the room on, and he's just kind of like, he's got a book, but he's just kind of scratching his head and muttering to himself, and he doesn't look very pleased. He looks kind of agitated.
Yeah. I'll walk into the room. I had a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Do you need some time to...
No. He puts the book to his side. He's like, sorry, it's kind of a mess here. Let me. And he gets up from the bed and he kind of moves the nightstand back to where it should be, like right next to the wall in the bed. And he's like, what? How can I help you?
I know the particular subject seems to bother you, but since you are the most experienced, there's no one else to really go to when questions of this nature arise. Do you experience dreams seem to be sent to you from spirits, almost as if they're made of the words that they whisper to us when we're sleeping?
Well, I can't say. The sleep has always been troubled.
I guess I should ask a more direct question then. Have you experienced the shadow men.
You will have to elaborate. Shadow men.
It's everything else seems so clear. The faces with definition. You can almost determine exactly who they are just by their faces, but these creatures seem to exist and wreathed in shadow. But they can see you and shunt you from the dream.
And this is something you've experienced while you were sleeping.
Just recently.
I don't believe, just to check with Micro, I don't believe Blinders experienced anything like that, correct?
Blinders had 2 dreams that were similar in 2 different ways. He had one dream, well, it was actually the same dream, in which he saw a creature wreathed in shadow. And then later in that same dream, a hooded figure turned or he heard a voice as though the hooded figures that he was around were speaking to him or something. And it felt as though they were interacting, in a sense, directly with him in a way, perhaps not looking at him. So there are similar things, yes.
Well, I have experienced similar things during my sleep, particularly with the shadow men, as you call them. They seem to be wanting to speak to me or interact with me somehow, like they could. Funny enough, I don't recall ever having such dreams for coming in proximity with you. Perhaps it's... I definitely think that there's something that may be trying to reach you in your sleep still. I don't know if if this is a particular quality that... You have to understand that there are things in the ghost field that are not or never were human or have been changed. I cannot profess to understand I have a very extremely limited, I'm sure, experience myself, knowledge. But yes, I have experienced them. And unless I haven't, Blinder will try to recount to the best of his knowledge the specifics. I don't have my notebook right next to me. I need to get it. I'm sure I wrote it down, but he'll give you basically what he can remember.
Why don't you grab that and then, to the best of your ability, try to explain the dream to him? Because
Sure.
I'm very interested in what symbolism that Blinder may have remembered. So go ahead and grab it real quick.
Okay.
Does he need to run inside for that, Angela? Oh, okay. For the moment, while he's grabbing the notebook, I don't know how long he's going to be. Why don't we turn back to the breakfast scene? Oh, he's already back. Okay. Well,
Go back to the breakfast. Yeah, I still have to find it in the notes.
Okay, sure. Spend a little time, and we'll return to that scene once Blinder's sort of read through, and then he can bring it up. Because, yeah. So we'll return to the breakfast scene for the moment. Please, Reaper and Martin.
Hey, Reaper. Something you might want to also know about me is I think I'm being haunted.
Because you started wanting to see?
No, because the fire that happens at Dungeons and Sons.
Oh, that's not part of you being able to see stuff?
No, this is different. This is. Did I tell you about finding Eunice?
I can't remember.
It's kind of a long, complicated story, but I found her in a cage. Because it was somebody was trying to set me up to get caught and rolled up, but it didn't work. And they tried to pin a body on me by just kind of dropping it through this hole in the floor into the locked basement where I was at.
Wow.
And I think the ghost of that body is blaming me for its death, which, if he wasn't dead when he fell down that hole and I could have saved him, that makes it partially my fault.
So what can we do about it?
I don't know. That was something I was gonna ask Blinder about today at some point, is how do you deal with a pissed off spirit? You know, I have it in mind to try and hit it, but I don't know if that's gonna do anything.
Yeah. Maybe make it matter.
Yeah, it just might piss it off, or I who knows? I might touch it and it might, I don't know, suck part of my soul out or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe.
Mercy, with a cup of tea, sort of stirring it, says, you could get one of those soul jars, maybe.
Oh,
Could.
yeah.
Where do we get those?
I mean,
Probably at the night market, I'm willing to bet.
Probably.
Didn't you guys say that you had some job that had to do with soul jars or something?
Yeah. Do we still have some?
No, you sold all the soul jars, so you don't have any remaining. But you guys would understand that the gondoliers were the ones that had been trading in them, so you at least know that the gondoliers may have some that perhaps you could barter for or something, or perhaps they could lead you in the right direction to finding someone else.
Should we do that? Can
I mean,
Blinder do that, or can any of us do that?
I have no idea. I've never operated one.
Let me go get Blinder. These are a lot of Blinder questions.
Yeah, well, why don't we just wait for him to come up for breakfast?
No, he barged into my room. Now I feel that just desserts is... I'll be back.
Well, you do what you do. I'm going to continue making oatmeal.
Okay. Do we have any more bacon?
No, we're out of bacon.
I need to go buy more bacon.
As Mercy's eating, presumably, the last strip.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Oh, Martin will snag that bad boy.
We could go halvesies.
And then I will go and leave the kitchen and walk towards Blinder's room.
Okay, so we're going to return to Blinder and Carver's scene, and they'll have several minutes before Reaper arrives, because, these things are happening simultaneously. And so if Blinder has found the notes specifically, and we can return to the conversation.
Found notes.
Okay, well, you found notes. It's fine. I mean, that it was a strange dream, and most people don't remember their dreams, so even if you don't remember all of the things that took place,
There were vague notions that came to me when we first met. I remember you were accompanied by a girl. It was very shortly after we were met by LaRoche. I remember the dream. I shared some of it. I saw a desert. I saw a railway. Creatures shrouded in darkness, campfire, blood. Something eclipsed and mist made of shadow. It was monstrous. I saw a rich man in a very rich area. The trappings of wealth. They were a couple, a man and a woman, I believe. If I'm remembering right, it was very hazy. There was children. I remember the happiness. Seemed like a home. But then something changed. Ink, or at least what appeared to be ink, a black, viscous substance dripping around the walls, despair, fear. I saw a vision of a web surrounding the man and a spider. I can assume that some of this is imparted knowledge. I did not want to say it, but at the time you had not professed the details of your history. Not that I is any business of mine. But you were wounded walking in that desert. And that was you. And something has accompanied you. Something has watched over you, or for you, perhaps. I do not know what happened. And, but I remember feeling and seeing the blood.
It's fairly simple what happened. Train was destroyed somehow. There was an explosion. I woke up and walked until I could walk no longer. Then I was saved. Scavengers. One specifically. Very kind individual. Vandra.
Vandra.
Yeah.
There's so much here. Sometimes I wonder if we are being led, or sometimes I wonder if we are making our own decisions and guiding ourselves. I am seeking a person who goes outside the wall. They carry a V name, a woman.
You have anything else to help you in that description?
I've only begun looking.
Well, Vandra might be a good place to start.
Why do you ask? What did you see?
I saw a couple. And I'll explain to him the rest of the dream.
Why don't you share the detail? Because perhaps you may not share all of the detail, so it may tell a different story than...
Yeah. Pretty important.
Yeah.
This couple, they seem happy. Something happens. And this man who seems to be wealthy, yet he has come from humble beginnings, stands before a panel of judges, or people more specifically just there specifically to judge him. He seems confident. He holds his composure. But then I'm transported with him and his perspective to a prison. And he scrawls on some scraps of some sort of paper a message. It seems a desperate message. He hears someone coming and hastily shoves the message into its hiding place behind a loose brick or loose piece of rock or whatever part of the wall, for he is dragged. And in that room, before I can ascertain what's happened to the man, the shadow appears, looks at me and says that I'm not supposed to be there, and pushes me from the dream.
You're pushed.
Yes.
Well, that is very interesting. I don't really know how to interpret that. You by the way, like, even though he looked agitated and things like that, he always looks kind of nervous. You notice that once you really set in to kind of observe his reactions, to you notice that his face has gone pale as a ghost. And then, Blinder sees probably your recognition of how he looks. Well, something is definitely interacting with you in your dreams, and I don't think I would like to talk about this anymore.
It's fine.
About that time, Reaper arrives, smacking on the door, barging in, whatever the case may be. The silence, the momentary awkward silence is broken. And Reaper enters, finding both Blinder and Carver somewhat silent and humbled.
You guys look like you've seen a ghost, huh? Huh? Ah, tough crowd.
Well, you're hitting the mark on the head there pretty accurately.
Yeah. Maybe I'll come back. I'm
Oh,
gonna go.
What do you need?
Well, Martin and I had some questions about Martin being haunted, but I think that we can talk about that later. I'm gonna go. Bye. Then she'll walk out. She'll walk back into the kitchen and give Martin the.
Look over. Blinder will look over at Carver after she walks out and be like, and he'll be more resolved now, and be like, she's asking questions because Martin's been having issues with his, well, we've had a discussion, me and Reaper, about her engagement with the affairs of our affairs. So, we should attend and not discourage her willingness to get involved.
You know, she asks you these questions on Martin's behalf because she's afraid to ask you for help to see.
She has every right to be afraid. But,
Yeah.
Well, before we join them, please understand that you did not broach into a territory that you are not welcome in.
I understand it's not a happy subject for you.
Yes.
It's just a piece of what I have to endure.
Mm-hmm. For some reason, I find myself very against my own better judgment, wanting to help you endure, Mr. Carver. But, I will resolve, and we can discuss this perhaps some other time. I do think that we are being subjected to the malign, or perhaps not so malign, agency of otherworldly beings. And that terrifies me.
I think that the more that we learn, the less we have to be terrified of.
Well, let's hope you're right. Let's go.
Sure.
And he'll straighten himself up, maybe flatten out his clothes a little bit, put his jacket on, and go upstairs to go have breakfast and stuff.
You all find yourselves in the kitchen. There's, as Martin had made, oatmeal in a sense made. More mushroom mash than oatmeal. But still similar in texture. There is no more bacon, sadly. There are eggs and things of that variety, toast, etc. And you all find yourselves there. I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, hey, you made it up. Morning.
Morning. Sorry
Yeah.
if we made you feel uncomfortable, Mr. Reaper and Martin. Good morning to you. We were just engaged in a very heavy conversation. But yeah, let's Can you pass the bacon, please?
We are out of bacon.
Now we have problems.
Martin ate the last strip, says Mercy.
Hey, oh, what? Yeah. Oh, you're just gonna roll me out like that? All right. So, Blinder, had a question for you. Really, a couple questions for you. It's about soul jars.
They hold ghosts. That's
Do you know how to use them?
No.
Damn.
Hey, we can go ask the what was their name? The wraiths.
We have to pay for it.
Yeah,
Twice. Because it's the wraiths.
Why are we asking about soul jars?
because Martin is haunted, and the idea is that we trap the spirit or ghost into the jar, and then he'll stop being haunted.
I don't know for sure that I'm haunted. I
Oh, so next
believe
story.
I have an idea.
I believe I'm haunted.
The interactions that we've seen with, well, the Beyond so far, it's always ended up violent in the cases where those spirits are trapped or forced to do something against their will. But in the case where we were resolved to solve the problem, things went pretty easy for us. What if the idea is to resolve the struggle that the spirit may have attached to you, instead of attempting to use some sort of short method cure-all?
Well, the sentiment is very it is easy to view these entities as people because we want to believe that there's something that remains of us. I do not profess to be, I've never professed to have a complete knowledge of what transpires. The one thing, at least I do know, is that when we are gone, we are not person, or what remains of us, what gives us the ability to choose, to want, to feel, is a reflection. And Mr. Martin is plagued by a force of nature more than a remnant of a person. And Mr. Martin has only recently begun to see. And that has attracted attention. Not consciously, but instinctively. Mr. Martin will learn to interact in his own way, perhaps, and defend himself from that hazard. I think the more that we fumble about trying to answer questions that we have no idea, including myself, the more that we will lead ourselves to destruction. I'm already attempting, because of Mr. Martin and our interactions and the threats that have become apparent, attempting to locate the source's information. We have acquired some funds, and we should now turn our attention to Mr. Mortis, who is a possible source of information as a dealer in the occult. But I don't think it's possible to resolve them. In fact, I think the very reason we can see them is the reason why they are unresolved. Can I have some tea? And he stiffly changes the subject.
So where's this Mortis guy at then? Mercy asks.
Night market is what we were told, I think.
Yeah, he's in a. From what I know, at least he hangs out in a very particular part of Night Market.
Do you know what part, or?
Martin, do you know what part? Oh, it's consulting his notes. I don't think I have it in mine either.
Unfortunately, I don't have it in my notes. But I do remember it was a spot in Night Market.
Yeah, my notes kind of have been falling to crap after episode 14, so I don't have anything in my notes either.
Well, I told you that you would know the neighborhood, and so I will give you. The neighborhood is known as Bell Street.
Bell Street?
Yeah, it's a neighborhood surrounding Bell Street.
Why do I feel I should have that? Bell Street.
Bell Street.
Bell Street is an area of Night Market in which, think of our modern day sections of town that would have like fortune tellers and things like that. And it's sort of the section of the Night Market where you have this sort of melting pot of different faiths and beliefs and practices and superstitions, and the shops that surround them. So you have, fortune tellers in some buildings, and herb sellers and others, collectors of strange talismans, or when they would tell you that they're talismans, are around the area of Bell Street. Bell Street being named what it was because one of the oldest Duskfall superstitions is that bells would ward away evil spirits, right? The sounds of church bells, etc., right? Although that's never been necessarily proven, especially for Blinder. He's never found any sort of direct connection between the sounds of bells and how it affects the spirit world. But yeah, old superstitions being what they are.
Well, I think Bell Street would probably be a good place to start looking. There are many charlatans there, but certainly amongst those who are fakers, there are the makers, yes.
Sounds like a plan for me.
We also have to get bacon.
We can get that on the way back.
Yeah,
We must bring home the bacon.
that's right. So I guess we're headed to Bell Street, that neighborhood. What should we wait for nightfall or should we do this during the day?
I mean, I don't think it would hurt to try both. Considering we're looking for someone who deals with our type of people,
Yeah.
more than likely they'll be available at night, but you never know. So Carver, how you been?
Struggling.
Struggling with what?
I have a very clear purpose for myself, and I have effectively done nothing. I've accomplished nothing.
Like in general or here with us?
No. My wife and children and their fate, what happened to us, why that seems to be tied in with what happened to anything revolving around everyone else here. My search for answers, information. I've done nothing.
Well, you've gotten yourself in a situation where you can expand information coming to you and be protected and not grabbed for whatever it is that they're searching for you from. Um, you've got us, and we can
Yeah, now you
start
got
looking into
backup.
that. Yeah, we just need a lead.
I think if there was a lead, it might be, as far as mundane leads go, I think that they might be buried by now.
Then we'll dig for them.
And I think at that point, we might start coming across the kind of lead that they can't bury. And I'm not sure how I'm going to react to that.
Well, we'll all be in it together, so
Anyways, I apologize for effectively being, well, out of commission. As I understand it, you guys went and had some adventure.
we did. We did.
Tell me about it.
Oh, we went and robbed somebody, and it was a front for a gang. They were using it to the parole row lead was pearls that were being used as a money laundering operation for coin. So yes, we went and robbed them, and once they find out who we are, they'll probably come after us as well. But I figured we could just go and rob them again.
Why not?
Well, we
got a
might
whole
as
other
well if
store.
they're just going to come after us.
Always make them pay protection money.
This
We
is
could.
we could. That's a great idea.
Yeah, so heard you just got robbed. We could protect you against robbery in the future. Yeah, that's a great sales pitch. All right.
So, shall we get
that it?
stuff to. Yeah, that's pretty much
No,
it.
I mean, we went in, we got in, got the door unlocked, fucked around with the vault door for a little bit, and then we got out, had a little scrap, but everything we had planned out worked perfectly.
We were visited by the owner of our establishment. We haven't come to the precise details of the arrangement, but we are going to look at paying him rents until a certain point in which we will transfer ownership of the place, hopefully. We think
What's his face like when he walked in?
very shocked.
And also kind of appreciative.
Appreciative.
Yeah, like he appreciated all the work we put into the place.
Including the downstairs.
Any luck he happens to own the place next door?
I don't know. I figured we would just do the same thing we did here.
Worked
And
for this
just-
one.
Most of the buildings here are abandoned anyway. I mean, he just happened to be stopping by, I guess. Apparently, we think he's a notorious criminal too. Or was retired, of course.
I wouldn't be surprised. This place was obviously built to handle things of that nature. Whoever owned it before us, or even before them, maybe, obviously built it for that purpose. Perhaps we're living a life along the same lines we are. Perhaps even more successfully.
Oh, I think they were successful. Well, yes, that's pretty much all that happened. I did see my friend Flint about my problem, my body art. And I do need to find some sort of more. The only information about what this is, it's apparently some sort of old dead language. The only way to find out anything about it is well, any information would only really exist outside the walls, potentially, or possibly in some sort of private collection. Which is why I'm keen to find Mr. Mortis. Or Ms. Do we know the... never mind.
So,
You're-
onward to Mortis.
Yes.
Are we going by carriage or by boat?
Carriage.
Carriage ride sounds good to me.
I see disappointments in Blinder's face.
I was so hoping for a boat ride, but it's okay.
All right, so we Going to the Bell Street neighborhood by carriage.
Okay. So you head to the night market district, to the area known as Bell Street, as I explained. An area of soothsayers and fortune tellers, people selling wares of trinkets and superstitious symbols, religious practices, the iconography of the forgotten gods. And as you pass through, people are trying to sell you these things. There are people sitting at blankets. Something.
I will stop at one of the fortune tellers and have them read me my fortune.
Okay. Sure. Anyone you're looking for specifically?
No, just whatever random one I can. The closest one to me that looks like, the old timey scarves on the table with the crystal ball.
Oh, okay.
The whole presentation.
Sure.
Yeah.
So something that seems just absurdly fake, basically, is what
Fake
you're saying.
Or very involved.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. So you, as you guys are walking down Bell Street, Reaper's like, "Oh, hey, look," and walks over to one of these sort of assorted tents set onto the street. Do the rest of you follow her into said shop space, or are you just
Winder
waiting outside?
shakes his fucking head and just refuses. He's just like, the charlatans are amateurs. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Martin wants to step in and see what's going on.
Sure. So you step inside, and you see a person that looks like a very old Scovelander, like an old woman, extremely long, gray, with white streaked hair, like very natural in a sense. It sits in tangles down her head. She seems as though in her young age she would have been a very tall, large woman, but in time and age she's sort of hunched over and much smaller. Her fingernails are a bit longer than most people would keep them, as though she doesn't have great manicuring, or anything of that variety, or perhaps it's part of the presentation in a way. Her clothes are not ragged or gross, but they are definitely old-fashioned, definitely out of date, and well used. There are things inside of this little shop with little price tags and stuff like that, selling wares. Most of it iconography, symbols from different faiths and practices. A lot of it, though, is very outside of most of your wheelhouses of symbolism. Blinder recognizes quite a bit of it, having been from Scoveland himself and being more familiar with their culture and heritage. Think of an easy way to sort of describe this is think of very like Icelandic types of iconography, like runes and things of that variety. The Scoveland people are very kind of a mixture of Scandinavian, Icelandic, like those sorts of European areas is sort of what the Scoveland people are very similar to. And so you see that similarity in the iconography and symbolism and works of art and trinkets and things like that. She has tattoos that are these faded blue tattoos that go across her arms all the way down to her fingers. And as you walk in, she doesn't greet you in the way that some of the other shop keeps have, where they're like, "Oh, hello." She sort of looks up at all of you that came inside with a wide-eyed stare. "Can you pay?" she says.
How much are you asking?
2 silver.
Sure.
She holds up a little basket to you for the silver.
Put it in there.
Are you squeamish?
No.
Prick your finger, she says, and she hands you this kind of old but clean, seemingly clean, bronze-looking needle that she sort of sets over one of the candles for a second and then hands you the not hot end of it.
I'll go ahead and prick my finger.
Mm-hmm. She grabs
And-
your hand after you do so and starts to push on the finger, like creating pressure until a droplet of it falls into a basin, a small basin on the table. There's no like crystal ball or anything like that, but it falls inside. She picks up some things from a pouch. It seems like bones and little pieces of things. And she speaks into them. You can't hear what she's saying. And then she drops them into the basin and they jangle, blood getting across them. She looks down into the basin. And then looks up to Reaper. You are lost, looking for something. But when you find what it is you're looking for, it will not be what you think it is. A false face, I see. A dark shadow follows you. You walk with a cursed man. And for 2 more silver, I can help you deal with that, she says, as she reaches over to a thing on the wall and then puts it down in front of you.
I think I'm okay. I'll yeah. I'm running
Marvel
low on
will pay
silver.
the 2 silver. Just
Okay.
anything helps.
Somebody's got to clip that. That was beautiful.
So Carver pays the 2 silver, and he has this little like rune stick sort of thing. It's made of like it's actually well crafted, you know, it's like simple wood. You know, but wood is somewhat rare. It's not a super big piece, you know, think of like a thin little wooden thing with runes cast into it. Blinder recognizes it. It's basically a combination of Skovland runes that represent protection. It's a very normal trinket that people would have in the
Like superstitious sort of thing.
yeah, it's very, very common. You know, people in the olden days, and this was something your family would talk about, is they would carve these similar runes into buildings and things. You know, this sort of idea of warding away spirits. Yeah, stuff like that. So, pretty common practice in your way. So you take the thing. She tries to upsell you in a few ways, you know, trying to make it seem like without these things, doom is surely on the horizon. And I presume based on your response, then you don't, you know, pay out a whole bunch, maybe a few little knickknacks here and there. But then...
Do I see a crystal ball in here that I can purchase?
No. You wouldn't see like a crystal ball.
I will ask her. Do you know where I can purchase a crystal ball? Around here?
No. Why would you want such things?
It reminds me of something. Old memory.
Perhaps a jeweler would sell one.
Okay.
Blair will come walking in very impatient. And he's like, "Are we done with this show? Could we?"
You watch your tongue, young man.
Yeah, she was very nice.
I'm sure she was.
So you guys eventually gather your things, presumably, and leave the small, simple tent shop.
As he like busts in, I kind of like smack his finger with the rune stick, and I'd be like,
sure, yeah.
"Back off, cursed man!"
Yeah.
Excuse me?
She told me that I have a shadow, and that shadow is a cursed man.
Oh, and she gave you the Scavaldi rune of protection and told you the spirits would protect you, yes. I was told the same thing when I was 5 years old.
That you were cursed and being followed by a cursed man?
No, that they deal in superstition and folklore.
A superstition doesn't always have to be doom and gloom. It can be entertaining as well.
I'm sure that you find no ceaseless amount of entertainment for a price based on my culture and background. Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, it's better than the entertainment based around my heritage. The entertainment there is beatings
True.
in the street.
Well, dude, that had to get serious now all of a sudden. Next. Let's just go. I'm sure you've had your fun now.
Okay, let's go. Thank you, ma'am.
If you need help, you know where to come, she says as you leave.
I appreciate it. If you need help, let me know too.
I'll be okay. I have.
Okay.
And then you guys leave. So you're still in Bell Street. Many more hawkers and charlatans, as Blinder had said, try bringing you into their specific beliefs and telling you how they will protect you from this and from that, from demons and spirits, from evil dreams and sleepless nights. And as the time goes on, I presume you start to ask around where you might find Mortis. Are you asking specific people? Are you mentioning that to like little shopkeepers and things like that? Or is there a way you guys are going about it?
Shopkeepers, maybe cart drivers that are around there.
Okay.
Yeah, other locals that look like they live here.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Mortis is an occultist. We know this much, at least.
You have been told that, yes.
Would this qualify as the bonus die I would receive for something supernatural? Because he interacts.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you choose to like look into the ghost field in a way, or
that's
something
what I was
like
wondering.
That, sure.
It's like if I could listen to the ghost field, to see if the ghosts are talking about. I don't know, like how that would work exactly. Maybe a tune. See if I could detect the passage of somebody who is interacting with the supernatural on a frequent basis. I don't know if that works either.
Well, I don't want to go into challenges right now. So I would say that I would be fine with Blinder having momentarily sort of peered into the ghost field. And although it is ceaseless chatter with the varying beliefs and superstitions and symbolism and iconography having all sorts of effects on the ghost field. Because as Blinder had seen before and learned himself that items do affect the ghost field in a way. And so one can only presume the varied effects that all a sort of melting pot place of all these different beliefs and wards and things would make the ghost field very strange.
Active
In some places and almost non-existent in others. And through a combination of the crew asking around, through a combination of Blinder sort of peering into the ghost field for what bits of information he can get, you are not told specifically exactly where Mortis is. But when people ask, or sorry, when you ask and people answer, at first, most of the people you speak to either say, I don't know who that is, or I don't know what you're talking about. And as the day sort of slowly goes on, and you're looking around Bell Street and you're talking to more people, and start meeting shadier and shadier characters, eventually you hear a name, a place. Someone tells you, says, well, you mentioned that you've been looking for Mortis. You haven't had any luck. The person says, well, I don't think, I've heard the name too. Most have. And I'm not familiar with Mortis per se. But I would tell you that if you're looking to find someone who deals in things that Bell Street specializes in, you should probably go to the Vale.
Is that an establishment like a bar or?
Sort of. It's a private club. Usually only members only. But I don't know, maybe you could find a way in. If Mortis isn't at the Vale, I'm pretty sure the owner could probably point you in the right direction. He's got fingers in every pocket in Bell Street.
Okay.
His name is Mr. Volaris. That's a name that echoes in Carver's ears. You've heard of Mr. Volaris. Roland Volaris is the name. He's mostly amongst Tycherosi, but he's a well-known Tycherosi of means. Sort of the name that people bring up anytime they talk about, will Tycherosi have a rough racket? And people like to say, well, Roland Volaris has done well for himself, what's your excuse, kind of a thing amongst the Tycherosi people. The story goes that Roland Volaris, unlike other Tycherosi, has a far more intense manifestation of his blood. And the rumor goes that Roland Volaris is half snake and half man. And that if a half snake person can do as well, then, other Tycherosi should be able to do quite well for themselves. In time, asking around, you will eventually find yourselves, just because I said I don't want to do challenges, etc., just because I feel like we could sort of just move forward. You'll eventually find yourselves through asking around where the Vale is. It's not a secret, it seems. It's just not a place that's bothered. As though Mr. Volaris has probably paid off the right people. Just keep it, private and safe. It is in Bell Street, but it's in a nicer section of Bell Street. In a section that is all new buildings, juxtaposed against many of these old buildings and things. It's a beautiful building of strange architecture that is cast in a sort of gothic vibe, in the sense of like sculptures of devils and demons and things sitting guarding the top of the building. If you think of those very old sort of gothic cathedrals and things like that, it has a very similar stonework and lots of sections of it. You find yourselves into a back alleyway. into what you presume to be one of the doors to the exclusive club known as the Veil. And I think that's where we will go to break. They came to what they believe to be the door of the Veil, and that's where we find our characters. There are 2 guards posted outside, dressed well. As you approach, they look up to you. They don't say a word, but they regard you with their gaze and with a nod.
I will walk up to one of the guards. I have a question for you. We are interested in entering this club, but as I understand it, it's a members only. How would we go about seeking membership?
The man with long hair cascading across his face sort of pushes the hair back out of his head, out of his eyes. And as you peer into his eyes, you see that they are completely silver, with only specks for pupils. He looks at you with these alien eyes, kind of looking you up and down, and then his gaze flickers to Martin and Blinder, Carver. You would have to speak to the patron of the house.
Can we?
Yes, but you would have to leave your weapons inside, at the door.
Understandable. I'll look at the crew. Okay. Thank you. I'll take my weapons out.
The man opens the door and the second guard follows you inside, taking all of your weapons, patting you down to make sure that you're not lying, basically. Do any of you try to conceal any weapons or anything like that, or do you give up what you have?
You give up what I have. I don't have much anyway.
Going to be getting these back, right?
Of course. The guard says to Carver. You'll be given them as you leave.
I'll reach down into the boot and pull out the pistol that I've been carrying there.
Hand over your knives. It's kind of like that moment from Pirates where everyone just sort of puts their weapons and then Carver's like pulls out a pistol and then pulls out a knife and then pulls out another knife and then pulls out his boot knife and then pulls out his big cleaver, and there's just like because of the number of knives he's shown to be carrying in most times in combat. You know, there's a goodly pile sitting on the table, and the guard just kind of looks at you like,
He's a butcher.
he takes the things into sort of like baskets and then sets them into like cubbies, like individual cubbies kind of a way. And you see there's a lot of them. It's in a walk-in sort of coat hanging closet, you would think, but it's been set up with cubbies. There is another one next to it that is in fact a coat hanging sort of closet, but the one he walks into with your things, he sets it into a sort of cubby. Takes a number, takes mention of a number, writes it down on a piece of paper, hands it to Carver, does the same for each of you, basically giving you the number for your cubby. In a sense, a sort of ticket. Simple ticket. He offers to take your coats.
Blinder will keep his coat on. He'll be like, no, this is my coat.
Martin will most definitely let them check his coat. He wants to feel fancy.
Sure.
Reaper will keep her coat on.
Sure. He'll take the coats. It is quite warm inside. I warn you. So.
Carver will check his coat.
Sure. After he checks your coats, and those of you that choose to keep them, keep them. The guard follows you and guides you up a stairway. The entryway was sort of an open hallway, and there's a stairway at the end, past the area where he checked in your weapons and things. There's another guard sort of standing up there, and he walks up and they have a short conversation, and the guard nods to him and he heads back to his post, and the guard that was waiting there escorts you, basically motioning a hand down a hallway. And you can see past him, the area that he was standing at a post at, you see a large opening into a room. A very somewhat dark room, but you can see that there are glowing lights inside. And what you see mostly, because you can't see individual people necessarily, you see shapes moving in sort of cascading darkness of sorts. There are flickers and fragments of light in broken shafts through the space, as though someone is taking candles and then putting them through a color filter of some variety, perhaps like a piece of film or crystals or something. And there are lights sort of shooting into the space of different color. What you see inside are these like beautiful, although not completely see-through, but somewhat transparent sort of silk tents in a sense, sort of not pontoon, but those old style canvas tents like you imagine, almost like circus style, but they're much smaller. And you see them set out throughout the entire space. You see what seems like probably waiters and waitresses, things of that variety, walking between the different spaces, giving drinks and bringing people what they want. And you see people are sitting inside these very tents in their own little private things, and they're chatting and drinking and playing games. And it has that very similar feel to Ashland Wharf. You know how where they have the closed hangars, but the closed hangars were on the outside, whereas this one is just a vast sort of open room with light sort of shooting through it. Soft music from a band playing off on the other side. It's like a very nice, somewhat ballad sounding classical music. So it's soft but has a nice tune to it. So you see that through the open door, and the man motions you down a hallway away from said space. He takes you, after you all follow with him, down a hallway. It sort of circles back on itself for a sense, as though you're going around the large room, until you eventually find yourself at a large double door. The doors are wooden and sculpted into it. There are symbols on it, like iconography of what seems like some sort of crest, or like a heraldry of some variety. And it's two snakes twisted into each other with both of their heads poking out either side of it. And a branch of some type, a thorned branch falling between the two snakes wrapped around. He knocks, and then upon hearing some sort of response, he opens the doors, pushing them open. And you see a large sort of lounge space with couches and bookshelves on either side. There are very nice cases, like you had seen, Carver, like you had seen in the smoking room when you had visited the Eruvian consulate with Reaper, with cigars, and there's sort of a bar, like an actual bar set there with a person who seems to be preparing drinks and things like that, or otherwise grabbing things, sort of like a butler in a sense, or a retainer of some variety. And on the far end, past all of these couches, and chairs and things like that, is a large open square space with vast windows set behind it. There is the what is that type of glass, the colored glass where they take it into pieces? Stained glass.
Stained glass.
Yes, there are these beautiful art pieces set into the windows, these 4 large windows, and it shows some sort of story that none of you recognize necessarily. It seems familiar to Carver, but he can't quite place it. And in this open space sits a single desk, very large desk, very nice, deep, dark wood. And a man sits in it, at a chair behind it, and he's writing on something. He seems, from what you can see, to be a normal man, albeit not Akrosen or Skovland. He looks like he may be Severosi, with that sort of red, amber sort of skin, piercing dark eyes. He is bald, like shaved, perfectly shaved bald. He has piercings on his ears and on his nose. His hair, like facial hair, is perfectly groomed, set into this like thin line that builds out, kind of tapers down, and then becomes like a goatee on his face. There are tattoos that you can see across a portion of his face that leads off into the hairline and down his neck onto his shoulder. From the top, you can see he's wearing a very fine suit that seems more Akarosen than something of another place. It is a very tailored and well cut to his form. The guard motions the four of you inside, and then, as you step inside, closes the doors behind you. There are only two people in the room, the retainer that I'd spoken of, and the man sitting at the far desk who seems to be writing something. What do you do?
Hi, which one of you is the patron of the house?
The man at the bar gives you that look like, and then
I'm just
turns his eyes towards the man sitting at the desk like,
I'll walk up to the guy sitting at the desk.
so you walk across this very large office space.
Yep.
He doesn't look up at you. He doesn't stop writing. He doesn't do anything until you eventually sort of cross the threshold from the lounging area into the open space. He sets his quill down into a little holder thing on his desk, and then just holds up one finger, and the man who is standing behind the bar walks over and sits down, pulling chairs from varied places, high-backed wooden chairs that are sitting on the far sides of the room, and he pulls them over. They also have beautiful engravings set into them, and sets them down. Blinder, I saw your hand go up. Did you have something?
Yeah, I was wondering if, because he has books on his bookshelves. Right?
Yes, he has the room on each side has sort of bookshelves, like set into the walls, basically.
When the rest of the group goes in to sit or to join the man at the table, following Reaper, I'm Blinder's going to linger behind a little bit, and I'm going to just try to basically scan over the books, the titles of the books, just really,
Sure.
Well,
I would tell you now that the collection is rather vast. And it has things from simple biographies and autobiographies to authored books of stories and parables, histories of different lands and cultural practices. It seems like a rather well put together library, having a wide breadth of information. But I would say that a vast amount of the books you notice are untitled, in a sense. Like there's not titles on their bindings or
no
markings.
binding, no binding marking, or no publisher marking on the binding or whatever.
They seem to be, and those books seem to be very old, like much older, before publishers would function the same way, putting their, the name of the book on the binding or something like that in order for it to be more appropriately set into a collection or something, right?
Okay. So he'll just note that kind of stuff and then follow in.
Sure. As you had moved over to the side, you noticed that there were these like sort of, not to say altars, but very similar. Like, think of like the marble altars you would set like a bust onto, but there's like sections on top of them with glass shields over them. And there's like old pages, very old pages set inside of these glass. I don't know. I know there's an actual term for it. Go ahead.
Like displays?
Yeah, displays, I guess, would be a good way to say it. Sure, displays. But yeah, those are set. There's not a lot of them, but there's several of them set throughout the room near the libraries. As though this place sort of serves as an office / library / lounge / art collection, in a sense, right?
Sure. Okay.
So the three of you sit down. Reaper was going to say something to him.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but we were interested in visiting your club, perhaps becoming members.
He finishes the last bit of what seems to be skimming through whatever he was writing. He picks up his quill again, signs at the bottom. He takes a bit of this like dust, puts it onto it, and then blows it off. He sets it over to the side to dry, and then looks up at you. What makes you worthy of being members here?
That would depend on your criteria of worthy.
Very interesting question. Should I then pose what I believe to be the criteria? Or should you decide? What do you think?
I think ultimately, if I'm going to be true to what my convictions are, it would have to be me that makes a decision of what worthy is.
And when you come into this place, what do you think would make you worthy to be here?
Well, off the cuff, I noticed that they took our weapons. So peaceful, respectful, perhaps here to relax and enjoy what we can enjoy in our everyday lives.
This is a place for all people of means to indulge in the things they wish to indulge in, without the worry or fear, persecution or harm or judgment. My rules are what happens here stays here. These halls could tell stories, but those stories are kept private. And if anyone breaks that privacy, they are no longer on the guest list.
Understandable.
People are free to conduct business here if they feel that they could, but if they violate my rules, then their name is struck from the guest list. Otherwise, all I ask for is a tithe. A tithe to ensuring the security of this place, ensuring the knowledge that it holds, ensuring the wealth of the experience. There may not be things for all people here, but for those who find things here that interest them, they will find that those rivers are deep. I noticed your friend, he says as Blinder presumably had caught up to the group and sat down, perusing through the books. My collection is open to my guests. As long as nothing is taken from...
Of course, of course.
Did you see anything interesting on the lecterns?
Many fascinating things of important. Some many things that I would love to see. Untitled old manuscripts, I'm assuming.
Yes, I'm very proud of those. Those are lectures, etc., from Old Town and from old first settlements of my people.
I see. Uh, I would very much like to look at those texts. I am interested in old languages and old things.
Is Carver wearing his glasses?
No.
No, he's not wearing his glasses. Okay.
I'm so much a sort of fascinated by the esoteric.
Well, you will find many wonders in these texts. But in the way of the displays, most of it is written in old Tycheros tongues. People referred to as, they presumed to be devil speak, but it was our native tongue. I'm unsure if your friend is familiar with such practices.
I am.
He'll take off his glove. And I was curious. I had an accident a little while back. And can't take off my glove. I was wondering, is this one of those old Tycheros tongues? And he'll show him the scar.
That is
We
a
came
symbol
here-
from some of the first languages, yes.
We came here looking for answers. And perhaps you may be able to, or well, the person we are seeking may be able to provide answers to some of our questions.
Or is it that you're seeking?
And he'll look over at Carver. Very obviously, by the way, there's no like subtle intrigue or yeah, he's just like, like
We're looking for Mortis.
I'm familiar with him. He's a member. Although I don't believe he's here.
A dear, dear friend of mine pointed me in his direction.
Your friend's name.
Connor Whistler?
Can't say I'm familiar with the name. Oh, he pointed you towards Mortis. Presumably Mortis would know more. As I said, he's a member, but I don't think he's here this evening.
Do you know where we might find Mortis?
Sure.
Oh my, it's really hot in here. I should have left my jacket at the door. Oh.
I enjoy a more warm temperature.
Certainly.
So I suppose the question now is, how much is membership?
A tithe. Something that adds. Whether it is more books for the collection, token of wealth, task performed to help, or whatever it is that you may trade in.
I think I like that one.
You like which one?
The task.
There are
We are
many-
movers and shakers.
There are many tasks that can be performed. Although I can only think of a few in the moment. Depends how determined are you to find this man? How determined are you to become members?
I'll take a look at the rest of the crew. I think, while still looking at the rest of the crew, I think that we are very interested in finding this person, and I think that we would be a good fit for this club.
In the way of a task to become members, I would need some time to think on an appropriate task. Membership is for life, you see. Should be something worth what is being offered. But in the way of finding your friend Mortis, a simple favor is much more in tune. There is a place known as the Devil's Tooth. I don't believe much, but they have some ingredients that I want. For a few drinks for myself and a few guests I'll be having later this evening. I'm short-staffed tonight, and I can't really send what remaining staff I have here to fetch such things. It's on the other side of the district. If it was just down the road, would have been much easier. I know it seems like not potentially whatever it is you find yourselves to be capable of sort of work, but it's something that could help. And it's something that could be done in the immediate.
Are they expecting the pickup?
Yes. It's sort of a timely manner. I have a special guest that I has asked for something. And we don't normally have such things on our menu. It's a new concoction. I don't want to call it a street drug because it's been sold as a luxury item. It's called Daydream. It's made by, or at least sold mostly by a night market local man by the name of Brill. And, he's very controlling of his product. But the Devil's Tooth has a few dealers. And if you're lucky enough, they may mix it into something interesting.
All right, sounds like we have a little errand to run. Let's go do this.
Blinder?
So Brill sells it, and we have to take it to the Devil's Tooth to have it mixed into a drink. Is that my understanding of what it was just said?
No, he wants you to go to the Devil's Tooth to meet with a dealer to get some Daydream. Because the person who normally sells it has a very tight hold on how it's sold and when it's sold. And so the only place, presumably, that he knows of to get it is from a dealer at the Devil's Tooth.
Brill.
No, he said Brill is the one who markets it.
Oh, okay.
Brill's the godfather, not the dealer.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
I see this going comically bad.
Yeah, this is going to be really, really bad. I already know.
Are you saying that to him?
No.
No, these are out of character comments.
Oh, I see.
Sorry.
No, we're just gonna be like, okay, no problem.
Yeah,
So you
we'll get
guys
right on
then leave or something?
Yeah, we leave and go to head in the direction after asking a local or two the location of the Devil's Tooth.
Oh, they can point you the exact direction of the Devil's Tooth. They're like, oh yeah,
Okay.
it's down there.
We will
Before
go
we take
there.
off, I'm gonna ask for his dealer's name and what their shop might be located, and like who to let them know we're picking up for.
You will speak to Mistress Kember, and you will let them know that it is for the private collection of Mr. Valeris. And she will know exactly what you're asking for.
As we're traveling, I'm going to pull Martin aside
Mm-hmm.
so the others don't hear.
Okay.
So, how do you feel about scoring a couple of those daydreams or whatever?
What?
For me and Mercy. I mean, just buying them ourselves.
Oh, I mean, if you got the money, to do it, do what you do. You know, as long as you don't hurt yourself, or my bestest friend in the world, we'll be all right.
I think that'll be a good little gift to bring back home.
I think she'd enjoy that.
Yeah. Hopefully I can afford it.
Hopefully you can too.
So you guys head to the Devil's Tooth. And as you arrive, there's this vibe. And I'm going to give you the full description of what you see. But I'm going to sort of give you an out-of-character explanation of what you're seeing. Imagine the most touristy place you could ever imagine. You know, like one of those big, intense, entertainment-based restaurants that you might experience in, say, like Hollywood or Las Vegas. This is sort of the Duskfall equivalent of that. As you approach the Devil's Tooth, you see that it is its own building set aside. The entranceway is this large mouth of teeth that open up over the door, like a giant shark or something like that, right? And you walk inside the maw of whatever this thing is through the vast open doors. And although this is not a place for children, I will have that be known, it is a adult bar, tavern, etc. As you enter in, you see that there are tubes and vials and all sorts of interesting and strange alchemical mixing stations and mechanical things pumping liquid through spaces and lights behind it, and there's so much going on in the space. It's as though the entire building itself has been turned into some sort of alchemical lab or something, and they just allowed guests to come into the center of it, and it surrounds everything in a sense around you, and leads off to the one side of the Devil's Tooth, where there are not a whole bunch of guests taking in drinks that you see that have strange smoke coming off of them that glow strange colors. Some drinks or food that lights up as though it's a candlelight or something flickering outwards. Think of a flaming Dr. Pepper times 10. These are strange and fantastical alchemical concoctions that you might imagine from a place as fantastic as Willy Wonka's sort of established.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But it is very much a tourist attraction. It is not cheap. But the vast majority of it is like beverages and food items and luxury, right? It's very tailored toward luxury. So fine desserts that have flavors beyond the normal, chocolate and this and that, and blends of things that are done through science, chemical science, apparently. Alcohol that doesn't taste like alcohol, in the simplest terms, and drugs and things mixed into drinks in ways where it provides some sort of potent blend that sends you into a sort of light as a cloud high, as would be. And that's the space that you find yourselves in. You go over to the one side where there are people basically, in a sense, sort of taking orders. And then walk off into the vast laboratory that you can see that's open air, and you can see it behind you, and there are people working at different stations and doing things and mixing things, and so there's this whole aspect of presentation to everything that's going on, where people will watch someone else order a drink or a beverage and then see them make it, and there's a flash of smoke or something, and lights are cascading out of it. Another person gets some sort of an alchemical concoction that looks like stars are literally trapped inside the glass, like you're looking at a constellation of stars or something, vastly, in the night sky or something. What'd you do?
I will look around and see if I can identify staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I will walk up to one of them and ask for Mistress Kimber.
The owner isn't here right now, but is there something you need?
We're picking up for Mr. Valeris's private collection.
Oh, of course. And they go walking off into the area where things are being made and collected. They have a few conversations with someone else, and then they walk off through a back door that leads basically out of sight. They're back there for a few minutes, and then they come back, and they're holding, basically in a sense, to think of like a collection of bottles and things. And they're holding it. Except it's not bottles, but it's like little vials, basically, a whole bunch of little vials of liquid. And the liquid seems to be like silvery, almost like a mercury hue, but it has this cascading, almost glittery sort of blue that is moving through it constantly, and shifts colors slightly. Think of have you ever seen one of those mood rings, how it shifts colors based on heat or whatever? It kind of has that effect. It's like sort of slowly changing colors and strobing through these different palettes of color.
Can I ask you, do you have 2 extra vials I can buy from you?
Oh, of the Daydream?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, we have some mixtures that we've paid for so that we can mix them ourselves. Do you want something that's more of our house stuff, or are you just hoping to get the raw stuff?
Whichever you recommend. I've only just heard of it.
Well, I haven't done Daydream myself, but one of our testers told me that it can come off a bit strong. And so if you mix it with something that's is going to not just burn through you real quick. It tends to be a more even high, from what I understand. So, yeah, we can whip you up some of that.
Okay.
So she goes off, and you guys wait for a short time, probably 20, 25 minutes or so. And then she comes back with these two little vials. Not the similar vials that you see in the case, in a sense, but different shaped vials, as though they're the different glass vials that they have around that they give to people for their little drinks and their tinctures and their, sort of things. And they give you these two little glass vials. And you can see inside... whereas the vials that you have for Valeris are those like thin, almost like beaker style, with, as I said, that sort of mercury and the changing colors. These ones have more of a blue liquid, and then you see that there is almost like a core in a center that's sort of moving through the liquid, almost like water and oil, between what you presume to be the Daydream and whatever other thing they've added to it. It's sort of like constantly shifting back and forth based on when you like move the vial or something like that.
And
Just
how much do I owe you?
shake it before you drink it.
Okay.
Oh, that'll be a coin.
Coin. Okay.
One
I'll hand her a
drachma,
coin.
please. Yeah, you hand the equivalent of a coin. You can throw a bag of silver for the two. Enjoy.
Thank you. I will go ahead and put it in my pocket, and then the vials that they gave us, the shipment that we're collecting, I'm gonna try to hide that under my coat.
It's
because
it's
okay.
a big thing. It's a big thing of
Never
a
mind.
bunch. Yeah.
Okay, so
You
I
can like
guess we're gonna
throw
hire
something over it and be like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just milk, or whatever.
soup for my family.
Martin, you got something?
Well, I was just gonna say I'll be willing to carry it.
Sure.
I'll keep it safe.
All
And
right.
then, put a little I don't know, piece of burlap or something over the top of it.
Sure. You could find a piece of cloth or something eventually. I mean, as soon as you leave, you could be like, hey, look, we'll go buy a shirt or something, right? You find a piece of burlap or something and cover it up. That's no problem whatsoever. But yeah, you have the things. Is anybody else doing anything inside the Devil's Tooth before you guys all take off back to the Vale?
I'm mostly just keeping my eyes like completely peeled. Ever since the name Brill was mentioned when we were coming to this area, I'm just like, keeping an eye out for anybody who's probably looking overly nervous, honestly.
Sure. You guys aren't in the area of the South Fork Tavern, which is generally where you had met Brill. This is in another section, more towards Gaddock train station. It's much closer to that area of town, whereas South Fork is a distance away from Gaddock. So
okay.
Yeah.
Then in that case, I'm just basically looking at the little concoctions, and when they finish, I'm like, okay.
Oh. Cool. So you guys gather the shipment that Mr. Valeris had asked you to grab for him. You grab all of it. You get your personal tinctures, in a sense, from the Devil's Tooth. And you presumably head back to the Vale, yes?
Yes.
So you guys re-enter, dropping off your weapons again. We won't make you go through all that roleplay again. But you drop off your weapons. You take the shipment, presumably back to the office, knocking on the door. The guard is with you. He knocks, then he opens it for you. And you go walking inside with the collection of Daydream. Set it on the bar, please. Mr. Valeris says.
Takes it, walks it over to the bar, sets it very carefully.
It may not be the sort of work you're used to, but I do appreciate it. Tit for tat. Your man, Mortis, is local to the area. He keeps a private shop down the street behind, once you step off of Bell Street, there's a sewing store, in a sense. It sells sewing supplies and things of that variety. If you walk around the back, there's an unmarked shop, in a sense, with an open sign. That is usually where you would find or get in contact with Mortis.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Let's not waste any time. Do we have anything else here to say? Then let's not waste time. Let's go find us about Mr. Mortis. Or it's Mr. Mortis, correct?
I believe it's just Mortis.
Okay.
Well, good evening to you. As I had
Good
said,
evening.
we will discuss in the future your membership. But for the time being, if you wish to engage, I'll make sure that your name is added temporarily to the list.
We greatly appreciate that.
Please write your names down if you could.
I'll
And he sets over a piece of paper. Okay.
just write the risen. No, blinder.
Carver Bouchier.
Martin MacCalister.
I'll look at the other ones. What did you put? Did you put Blinder, Doug? Okay, I'll put Reaper on there.
Well, my guest will be arriving soon. Good evening to the four of you.
Good evening.
And you go walking out of the veil. What are you going to do now? I presume you're going to go find Mortis?
Yes, we're going to go to the shop behind the sewing store.
Okay. So you head down Bell Street until you get to the end of it. You see the sewing store, as he had said, across the street, around a corner in a sense. You head down the alley past it, and you find the unmarked door with an open sign on it. Like hanging inside.
I will walk in.
You walk into what seems like a mostly empty shop. Like there's not any things. You see lots of packages, though. Small packages that are set into little papered boxes and things like that. It's like a parcel service space, but none of them are marked.
Hello, hello. Is anybody here?
As you enter, there's a sort of ringing of a bell. You all step inside and you say that. A few moments later, you hear some steps, and then out of a back door walks a man. He walks with a slight limp. He uses a cane sort of walk as he walks towards you down the hallway. As he approaches and comes into the light, what bleak daylight exists out of the shadow, you can see that a portion of his face seems normal, like a normal Aquarosian person. And the other side of his face is horribly scarred, almost burned.
Mortis?
He pulls up a hood from the clothing he's wearing. He's wearing like a long jacket with hooded sort of clothes underneath it. Kind of sort of trying to hide the portion of his face. All you can really see is a portion of his face staring out from you in one eye.
The sign said open.
This place is open.
And are you Mortis?
Who is asking?
Someone who was sent. Connor Whistler?
Keep your hands where I can see them. All of you. If I see you, move quick. presume you mean me ill. Are we understood?
I'll raise my hand, by the way, and I still have the glove off. I never put it back on.
He looks at Blinder's hand.
We're here for answers, not hostilities.
He walks over to the door, flips the sign, and locks it. Come with me, he says, and he starts walking back down the hallway he had come out of.
Follow him.
He opens the door, and you guys follow him into what seems to be like a warehouse space. Presumably the adjacent building that seemed to connect. There are windows that sort of let in a bit of light. And what you see is boxes. Just unmarked boxes. Bigger, sorted, shelves, things like that. It's very much, like I said, a parcel service is what it seems to be. He steps inside and waits for you all to come in. And pulls up a stool and sits on the stool. Let me see your hand. He holds it, and one of his hands seems fine, and the other hand seems somewhat burned, and he pulls out a glove and puts the glove on and starts looking over your hand, Blinder.
Mr. Mortis, we are here because of because my friend here,
Because of Connor Whistler.
Hmm?
You're here because of Connor Whistler. I understand. Did you knowingly activate the symbol?
Not intentionally. I didn't have any paper, so I copied it onto my hand.
Well, one would think you've learned your lesson. He says, and he lets go of your hand.
I would hope.
Connor told me about a friend of his, Carver.
That would be me.
He said I should expect you. I wasn't expecting your friends.
We could leave if you want, and...
You're already here, it's fine.
Okay.
Well, ask your questions already.
I don't know why I've been sent here.
Presumably because Connor had to go into hiding.
Why did he have to go into hiding?
I don't know. I know he was looking into old things.
Things like what's on his hand?
Yes, old magics.
To what end?
I don't know. People can get lost in madness from such things. It's a reason that the old ways aren't practiced anymore.
So you think that Connor Whistler was mad?
No, I think Connor Whistler is looking for something. And I think that thing he's looking for is because of you.
Did I do something to you? Or
No. Why?
you just seem really aggressive.
I don't know if I can trust you.
You can't trust me. You can't trust any of us.
Well, then that's why I'm aggressive.
But you can't trust anybody.
As a
Do
point
I
of
look like a
fact-
guy with many friends?
I don't know your life.
Excuse me. Can I interject? Well, it is all well and good to point out the fact that none of us can trust each other. Mr. I would like to steer the conversation back to Mr. Connor. And he was looking into old magics, you say?
Yeah.
Do you know if he was practicing said magics?
He couldn't have done it on his own. Finding enough information about things like that takes means, connection, wealth, etc. He would have had to have some sort of patron, someone backing him, someone feeding him information. Maybe that's why he went into hiding.
We suspect, both myself and Mr. Carver over here, that there is a group that is aligned, well, particularly against Mr. Carver, who practices the occult. That Mr. Connor was either involved with somehow, or maybe is the enemy with some sort of ties.
We're
Both-
talking about a conspiracy in the government.
It was a conspiracy of some sort.
There was a train crash that they don't acknowledge happened. Accident on the train. Explosion. Whatever it was. When I arrived here in Duskfall, they refused to admit that it could ever even happen. And moments after my inquiry, they sent someone to hunt for me.
I'm familiar with the concept.
We sought you out because even though I have some familiarity and knowledge, rudimentary as it is, of such magics, I do not have the complete means or we needed to know where and who or what we are dealing with and where we can find the means of understanding what sort of things are being practiced or used.
I can't answer all your questions. I know some things, but not everything. I can tell you you're right, though. There's something else going on. sort of conspiracy or something. But it's nothing new. It's nothing that just happened. It's been going on a while. You're probably not the first person that was hurt by it. You're just one of the more recent.
Does the name Westenholt mean anything to you?
Yeah, I heard that name. A woman, Carmilla, is it?
Yeah.
Carmilla Westenholt. Making a play to become one of the new ministers of the Ministry of Preservation. Being offered a cushy job. At least that's what I hear. Now that she's the sole heir of the Westenholt fortune.
Sole heir?
Yeah, didn't you hear? The heir. He died. His family died too. That makes Carmilla the sole heir to the family fortune. Which would make sense. Why the ministry wants to bring them in. Get more big players behind them.
And this Carmilla Westenholt has some sort of affiliation with practitioners of the arcane?
No. He just asked me if I recognized the name Westenholt. And I told him I did.
I see. We were attacked by individuals who were following Mr. Connor. They were hired. Would you have any idea about who he might have been following him around, or?
I mean, unless you got a name, I can't answer any questions, really.
His name was Owen, or at least that's the name that we knew him.
Owen. Guy with a scar on his face.
Yeah, that's the one.
I heard of him. Although I don't know what happened to him since he disappeared.
He disappeared.
Yeah, a few years ago. Up and disappeared. Why, are you saying you've seen him since then?
He was...
No. Well, yeah, actually. Did we see? No, I didn't see him. Someone else saw him.
Recently.
Recent enough.
Yeah. Owen Shields. If we're talking about the same guy. Maniac. Presumed dead a few years ago. He used to trade in these sorts of things, esoteric sort of stuff. He was one of those survivors. You know, the ones, the prisoners they send out into the Deathlands. He survived and he came back. And then after that, he went missing. People thought he was dead. Or that he went mad and went back out into the Deathlands. But I mean, if you're seeing you saw him recently, maybe he's not as crazy as people thought he was.
Or maybe he is just that crazy and survived.
I mean, anybody that survives in the Deathlands has to be some sort of crazy.
Do you know any more information about this Owen guy, like where he used to like to hang out at all? In like any of his old haunts?
I mean, he used to hang out in Bell Street. That's why I knew him. Like I said, he was in a similar trade until he went missing.
Hmm.
When he got back from the Deathlands, he had all the stuff. These items and things. People asked him where he got them. He said he found them.
I see. He used to deal in items he purportedly procured from beyond the wall.
That's the story, at least.
I see, I see. I was told when I asked about this, somebody who is not somewhat knowledgeable about such things, that the only way that it could be deciphered, the only place sources of information could be procured were from beyond the wall. Old. It is an old language.
Yeah, either that or you find a collector. But most collectors are pretty secretive about what they have. Pretty rare stuff. Lots of people want it.
I am not a collector, but I do seek knowledge and and I do seek. There is somebody who's using magic. Mr. Carver here told me about a ritual. He copied it onto paper and pull out the scrubbing that I had of the ritual sorcery that we took from the wraith's place.
Sure.
Then this is obviously something very different, but I think it might be being practiced by the same individuals.
I've never seen this before. This isn't old, though. This is new stuff. I mean, it's a mixture of the two, you can see, and he starts pointing out basically your portions of what you wrote into it, you know, like what you had created. He was like, this is all new theology here, right? Based on new theorems and thoughts, right? But that's all old stuff there. Look at the different symbols there. It's all similar iconography.
I see. I'm interested in knowing more. If you could, obviously, whoever's wrapped up in this conspiracy against Mr. Carver and Mr. Connor, practices, we will need to be arming ourselves with such knowledge.
I owe Connor kind of a big favor, and so he had mentioned that he would have a friend stopping by, so Carver If you need my help with something, you just let me know, okay?
Yep. I do need your help. I need to figure out what happened to my family. I need to know what happened on that train. Who and why they're covering it up. Any information that leads me to ground on this subject. I don't even know where to begin. All avenues are closed to me.
The question you gotta ask yourself is, if there's a vast conspiracy going on, and they covered up something, they would have had to do it in a place where no one would see it. Where would they hide?
Desert.
Where would they hide a train car? There's only 2 railways I can think of that I've ever heard of. They go from here to a different city. It's a big circle. But what people forget is that the train tracks that exist now aren't the same ones that used to exist. There are old tracks and old places, old mines, old cities. There's a lot of places one could hide something and no one would even know. No one's gonna go out there into the Deathlands looking for it.
I would.
Sure. But no one else. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't be so sure.
Have you ever...
Scavengers are kind people.
You know the Deathland Scavengers?
Yeah.
Not all of them are kind people. Some of them
The ones I met were glorious,
well, you
glorious examples of how to be then.
Well, then you got lucky then. And you found some of the ones that weren't crazy in a bad way.
Yep.
If they pulled a broken freight car, carriage car, into the station, that would that would pull out questions. It would be something they would have to cover up. So that means maybe a proof is out there beyond the lightning barrier. The question becomes, are you willing to go out there to find it?
I know I am.
I got your back.
I have my doubts, but I think I could probably muster maybe some courage. Not really. I would rather hire somebody to go with you.
If you're gonna go out there, you better hire a guide.
When did Vandra say she was going to be coming back?
She comes back once a month is what she said, remember?
Okay.
Remember, she comes back and then trades what goods and things that she found from out there. And then, then takes it back with her.
I have one question for you. You spoke with, well, actually, technically 2 questions. you spoke with Connor quite a bit.
Connor and I are old friends.
Before you last saw Connor, did he mention anything about a person named Skurlock?
Reaper will make a big sigh and just kind of blow out air.
Why would you want to know about Skurlock?
Just a name I heard, and judging from your expression, it seems to be a pretty important name. Figured,
There are a lot of important names in Duskfall, but there are different circles that each of those names circulate in. And in the circles that I exist in, Skurlock is the boogeyman. There are rumors that Skurlock is what you become when you go too far. That he's always been a monster. And he was never a man, but a demon. Whichever story you want to believe, it doesn't change. The people that talk about Skurlock disappear. People that know about Skurlock disappear. So be very careful who you talk to about that name. Because if you keep talking about it, you might disappear.
noted. Well, now that I've been sufficiently terrified,
We should go get dinner.
yes, I do.
Carver, next time you want to talk to me, although I don't have a problem, I would prefer that you talk to me privately. It draws more eyes when 4 people walk in here, but if one person walks in here, it seems like it's just business.
I'll keep that in mind. If you're a friend of Connor's, keep an ear out for him. I don't know what he's gotten himself into, but as good as a friend as he is to me, I would hope that someone else is looking after him as well.
You and me are in the same boat. I don't know what Connor's doing or where he went. But in the meantime, he called in that favor to make sure that I would help you if you needed it, so I'm here.
I appreciate it.
Okay, well, get out of here. I need to recast my wards, he says, as he starts shooing you out.
Your wards? Oh. They just start looking around, like, see if you can see.
Yeah, you see that there are symbols drawn into the walls.
He'll, Can I take a look? I'm somewhat of I'm an enthusiast.
You and Carver can come back another night.
Oh, very well.
Your girlfriend said you guys needed to go get dinner. Go get dinner.
Just... Okay. Let's go, honey.
Carver actually does one of those laughs, just high pitched. Oh, nothing to break up the tension like a
Oh, but
well that.
Mortis though is straight faced the whole time. Like he didn't mean it as a joke. He just meant it in that kind of way. Like your girlfriend's calling. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
So we will go get, what is there, goat?
There's all sorts of stuff. You're in the night market. There's all sorts of street vendors and food carts and restaurants and bistros and all sorts of stuff of all levels.
I'm gonna treat the house, as it were, to good food. So I'm gonna buy a bunch of stuff that we can make
Sure.
for dinner and do that.
So you're gonna
and
do
get
like more of a grocery shopping sort of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you're looking for groceries and not just specifically exotic goods in the sense, you'll realize that if you're looking for like produce and things like that, the actual place that you would want to go, although it's sold in some sections of night market, but you can see it's extremely overpriced. When you're like, really, this is how much this costs? Eventually people start pointing you in the direction of saying, well, Barrel Cleft would be where you would want to go if you're actually looking for good prices on like produce and things like that. And Barrel Cleft is the district that is literally right to the west of the Pond Street Pub. It's where all the farms and everything are. That's Barrel Cleft, right? So it's like going to the farmer's market versus going to the store, which is what night market is, and buying the produce, right? You're buying it directly from the people who grow it, rather than that roundabout sort of way. So that is an option if you guys decided that you wanted to do some shopping. Hey, let's go check out Barrel Cleft, because you hadn't really been there yet, really.
I will go to wherever the rest of the group wants to go. And basically it's like, while we're shopping for food, it's like, why do I always feel like you're like treating me to my final meal?
Do you know, like good food?
I love good food. I just know that good food is probably going to be the last thing I eat.
Well, then enjoy your last meal.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll say you pick up some things in night market, some spices and some other things like that. Different sort of exotic goods and things like that. You head over to Barrel Cleft for like the produce and the other sort of things that you guys need for the sort of grocery shopping. You eventually gather all those things. Barrel Cleft, by the way, even though you haven't been there, as I sort of described briefly, Barrel Cleft is an assortment of neighborhoods and sort of a village-esque vibe. That is where all of the not to say the farm workers or laborers necessarily live, but the people who like own the farms and like the higher ups of the farm, the people who sell them. There are some of the people that actually own some sections of the farm themselves who also have like shops and things like that. But as I said, it's like basically a district of farmers markets. It's where the ealeries are and all the vegetables are grown and what vegetables exist, the mushrooms farms, all those sorts of things, right? So it is a entire neighborhood of the homes of people who run this giant sort of farmers market-esque district. When you're there buying things, they're not welcoming, but they're business-like. They're like, yeah, sure, and they sell you things. If you start asking personal questions, though, you realize very quickly that the people of Barrel Cleft are very tribalistic. They're very shun the outsider sort of thing, and not necessarily outsider in the sense of any sort of heritage or anything like that, but just like, you're not from here, you're not part of Barrel Cleft, so don't be, those are the wrong sorts of questions, right? That sort of thing.
Unless anybody has anything to do in Barrel Cleft, I wanted to do something using the food and the whole cooking thing. I'm going to distract people, and then Reaper's going to go, because Reaper paid attention when Blinder was telling Martin to focus on the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna go and lock herself in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna start focusing on the mirror by herself without saying anything to anybody.
Okay. Are you taking the daydream?
No.
Oh, you're saving that for a different time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, everyone makes food. They eat. There's a sort of a vast meal, as well as extra groceries for bacon and things like that for the next assorted number of days. Everyone is eaten to their full, is enjoying themselves. At some point during the meal, Reaper disappears and is off in the bathroom. And what is the rest of the crew doing?
I think you would just eat, like, and probably chit chatter about where to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
for like,
So just
you know,
sort
how
of
much
normal.
this guy knew and whether or not he would be a good source of information about occult stuff, maybe. But like, other than that, like, it's mostly just like trying not to be awkward while shopping.
Sure.
Like,
Is this back at the hideaway?
Yes, we'll presume you have. Is someone typing?
Oh, sorry, that's me.
No. Oh, sorry. Yes, you guys have returned to the hideaway. You have made dinner or lunch, or it's probably lunch by now, or a late afternoon lunch, that sort of thing, or early dinner. Why? What was on your mind, Carver?
Carver kind of seems deep in thought for a while, and after Reaper kind of just takes off, he speaks up. I kind of wanted Reaper to be here for this, but I figured I should probably let you guys in on the bigger picture regarding who I am, considering that it's become a topic of recent discussion.
Is this a private conversation you're having with the crew, or is this in front of everyone in the pub?
This is in front of Mercy, Clyra, Martin, and Blinder only.
Okay. Sure. So it's more of a private conversation, not everyone that's in the pub. Okay, that's what I was just checking real quick. I didn't know if you were.
I'm okay with shit. What are their names?
Eunice and
her
Aldo.
Yeah,
and Virgil.
I'm okay with Eunice and Aldo hearing, though probably not Virgil.
The doctor?
Yeah, probably not.
Oh, the one that works for you guys?
No. Yeah. No, I'm okay with him hearing too.
Yeah, so basically the only people you don't want hearing is Marvin and Clem.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll say you guys wait until they like go on break or go off to piss or something like that, and then you have the conversation. Sure.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. So all good.
It's been a recent topic, and other people are aware, and if there's the potential that it could be used against me, it could potentially be used against you as well. And you deserve to know. I am the heir to the Westenholt family fortune. I am Zacharias Westenholt.
so you're rich.
Not at the moment, no.
Blinder would specifically know who the Westenholtz is. The Westenholt line are a line of wealthy military officers that served in the imperial military and were high-ranking officers and have been involved in several of the wars, including the conquest of Scotland. And, you know, because the empire itself is, in a sense, a military government, people who are high-ranking military officers tend to do very well. And so the Westenholt family is one of the many very, very wealthy families of high-ranking Akaros Empire officers.
So I
Mercy
see.
already knew. And given her background and mine, we felt it best to just hold these things back for a time and get to know the rest of the crew a little bit more. But yes, I am the heir to the Westenholt family.
So why haven't you gone back to them to try and clear your name?
Shame.
Just saying, if you got a family that's as connected and wealthy as I only can imagine they are.
My wife, myself, my 2 children, we were targeted. Whatever happened, if I went back, them knowing where I was probably wouldn't have survived this long.
That was your family that was killed in the train.
Yeah. I walked for days after the explosion, it seemed. I was found by Vandra and her crew. They healed me, nursed me back to health. Even protected me against the voices that called. They led me back here.
I see. Who is Carmilla to you?
My aunt. We were close for a while. I think
Has it ever occurred
distance.
to you that maybe she is the one who arranged this? Before now? Mr. Mortis did say that she was due to inherit.
She's always been well off on her own. Her husband's the one that we've always been standoffish about. We don't say anything to her about her husband because he makes her happy, and that's all that really matters at the end of the day. Carmillus, I didn't see being behind this because of how close we were. What the family meant to her. But seeing the things that I've seen since coming to Duskfall, I see that treachery can run deep. I don't know who to trust.
And let me tell you, family is some of the ones that can get you the most.
This is all very much.
I'm not even certain if my parents still live. But if they do live, they would be the next targets. And I bring this up now because Camillus and the possibility of her being involved in what happened to my family concerns me when it comes to what might happen to my parents.
Well, this is a lot. Can you pass the bacon?
Passes the bacon.
It seems that they had bacon for breakfast and bacon for dinner. And although most of them shared a conversation revealing something that was near and dear to Carver, Reaper was off, engaging in something potentially far different. And although I would like to delve into the depths of what that scene can entail this evening, I feel that perhaps it would be better for us to end our game there and pick up next week with that scene. Sing it, Doug! Sing us out!
Goodbye. We'll see you next episode.
Oh, yeah.
Goodbye. We'll see you next episode. We'll play Blades in the Dark all night long.
Oh, yeah, that's the song of my heart right there.
All night long.